I'm reaching you live from New York City on Sahara TV. Today is Saturday. Again, we are talking about Nigeria's most important security challenge, which is the insurgency by Islamic militants in the northern part of Nigeria. And we have on our telephone today Comrade Shehu Sani, who has been very, very knowledgeable about the Islamic insurgents in northern Nigeria and has made his position very clear about what should be done to actually end the insurgency. As you all are aware, the Nigerian government recently claimed that they are in dialogue with the Islamic the insurgents, and they came out a few days ago and said, well, this is a lie. We are not dialoguing with the Nigerian government, and this is our position. But one of the things that happened, which we're going to talk to Comrade Shehu Sani about, is the fact that it took Boko Haram a while to respond to the speculation that there was dialogue. And by the way, Comrade Shehu Sani is the president of the Civil Rights Congress based in Kaduna, in the northern part of Nigeria. Comrade Shehu Sani, you are welcome to Sahara TV.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So let's go straight to this. Like I mentioned, one of the surprising things that happened this time around is that we had some news that there's dialogue between Boko Haram and Nigerian government. But it took Boko Haram almost 2 weeks before they actually dispelled that rumor. Why did it take them so long? Because typically, you know, within hours, within days, they will respond and debunk those kind of speculation if it wasn't true. Why do you think so?
Well, first of all, I believe the best people to have answered why the delay should be the Boko Haram's leadership. But from my own view, since the news came out that there was a dialogue going on between the government and the group, I never wasted my time in believing that there was anything like this.
Yes.
For the very fact that, first of all, if there was actually a dialogue going on between the government and the group could have, right from the beginning, make its own position very clear on the issue. And from also my knowledge, there were 2 attempts made at dialogue, apart from my own initial facilitation, which I took the late President Obasanjo there. The 2 most prominent attempts were one of their members whom they said they sent for a dialogue and was arrested. And secondly was the effort of that was led by Dr. Dr. Ahmed, that was also facilitated by a journalist whom the group trusted so much. So this issue of this dialogue coming up at this time, reported by the government and somebody making claims to have been the deputy leader of Boko Haram, I never believed that it was true. And true to my word, when I made the statement that it wasn't true, the group later came out and said that there was actually no dialogue going on. And apart from that, even if there was any dialogue going on, first of all, you have to see the symptoms of dialogue, like a ceasefire and also a sort of reduction in the volumes of attacks and bombings going on in the north. There was nothing like this happening. So to me, I just saw it either the government has been trying to deceive Nigerians by giving them a false sense of hope, or the government were sitting down with some persons who claim to be members of the group and deceiving both the government and Nigerians. So that was what I've come to the conclusion on that issue.
Yes, Comrade, I have to ask this question about what Boko Haram is looking for. In their latest email to Premium Times of Nigeria, they said clearly that they have foreclosed any opportunity for dialogue. As a matter of fact, they went ahead to warn Dr. Ahmed Dati in that email that we saw and we republished on Sahara Reporters, that he should respect himself and not engage in any kind of dialogue as they have heard. Why do you think, have they fallen out now with Ahmed Dati? Is that what it means?
From what I know, we'll just give an example for myself here. If I will offer myself to mediate between the government and the group, first of all, I will need the recognition and acceptance from the side of the government, and also present myself to the group if they still see that I'm somebody who they can trust. Now, from what I know, the last talk that broke down between the government and the group, which Dr. Dati Ahmed represented the group, was one thing that happened some times ago. But I was not very sure if he had their approval and the mandate to go in for a second talk or a second discussions. So if they have not come to warn Dr. Ahmed last time, and they are doing it again this time, it shows clearly that perhaps he never, if he was actually part of this talk, he was actually never doing it with their mandate. It wasn't possible for them to have come out and announce it. They have approval of him the last time.
Yes. Again, I want us to talk about the question of them foreclosing dialogue, because one of the things they said recently is that, except, of course, Nigeria accepts, the entire country accepts Sharia as a law, there's not going to be any form of dialogue. Is this just an exaggeration? Are they just doing this to raise the bar, or are they serious that there's not going to be any dialogue until, of course, either side wins?
Well, from what I know as an activist that had been in the struggle for freedom for a very long time, what I know very clearly is that you can't come to a negotiating table and get all your demands. And for someone like me, I do not think even if 1 million or 2 people are bombed, that Nigeria will become an Islamic state. It is virtually not possible. The heterogeneous nature of this state is not the kind that will accommodate that. And we will also be very clear that it's not only the Christians that have their differences with the group. There are also people from other sects in northern Nigeria. Just like in Christianity, you have Protestants, Catholic, people from Jehovah's Witness. So also in Islam, you have different sects, the Ahmadiyya, the Tijaniya, the Riga, and so many other persons from different sects that ideologically and philosophically and in every respect, they do not agree with the thinking, the thoughts, and the views of that very group. So in this aspect, I will say it very clear that that demand is not realizable. But for people like me that have sometimes been able to make positions known to the group, what I have always advised is that there are things you can achieve, and there are things that cannot be achieved. And
what do you think are the things they can achieve in the meantime? If we are to, let's say the federal government calls you today, because you have always said this, that you know how to end this, you know how to bring about dialogue. What are the immediate things you think the group wants to achieve and can be achieved for there to be ceasefire, if you don't mind telling us?
Okay. The suggestions we give from the beginning, and what I have always been presenting forward, is that first of all, whoever is going to facilitate, not necessarily me, but I knew, like I've said earlier, in the last text they have sent to the media, they have mentioned the name of a person whom they trusted so much. So why are the government not listening to that person while he has facilitated a talk that was for the first time about to bring in results that will have ended this violence? Why has the government continuously ignored that person and rather are going for big names? Is it because he is not a governor or not a politician or not an emir? Why must they be going to emirs and certain persons who they want them to mediate? Why not that person? If the group, if he has already performed in the first instance, he should be the person who should have been consulted to work, because whoever is going to dialogue must have the trust of that group and the recognition of the government. Without the government and without the group accepting a person to mediate, certainly that is not going to work. But from my own view, there are things that can be realized. For example, they have consistently made mention that their members have been in detention and people have been arrested and all those things there. For me, I think if we can categorize those in detention into three. First category are those they are top leaders, and the second category they are foot soldiers, and the third category are their wives and children. To my own belief, if the government will take the third category and make it an offer that the mediator will guarantee both the government and the group that whatever is discussed is going to be fruitful and will yield result. Why they have foreclosing dialogue simply has to do with the fact that the first attempt at dialogue led to the arrest of their member, who was their member, but who was also an advocate of dialogue. The second was sabotaged when they gave a condition that such talks should be confidential. Then it became a media event, and then it collapsed. So they do not have that trust. But I believe that the person they mentioned there on that text they made could still be consulted. And I am 100% of the belief that you don't need to spend even $1 million to get this problem to an end. But the issue is that there are those whom the government feels that they should do it, and they are the ones whom they recognize. But we don't know that the peace lies with someone whom you do not think that matters in the society.
One of the things that we would, people will of course want to know is if the amnesty style kind of negotiation that the government pulled off in the Niger Delta region with Niger Delta militants will work with Boko Haram. Do you think this will work if the government were to say, look, we're going to forgive all of you guys, and, we pay for your losses, and sometimes, make some of you millionaires? Do you think this will work with Boko Haram militants?
Well, first of all, I think the first approach to ending this violence is securing a ceasefire. The group must end the attacks on churches, the killings of Christians, the continuous bombings, and the violence that has been going on. And then the government must rein on the joint task forces to also stop raiding, arresting, and also killing both members of the group and also their family members. So what the group can offer for this is to end all hostilities and all acts of terror. What the government can offer is to at least release those children and wives of the members of these groups that were arrested simply based on the fact that they are family members of these persons here. So if we can achieve a 6-month ceasefire, then from there, an atmosphere will be created for which now we'll sit down and talk on the details, which perhaps the formula that has worked in Niger Delta can come in here. But I do not think that the group has any financial interest or financial demand, just like the way the militants in Niger Delta do. But I'm of the firm belief that the guaranteeing them the release of their members and possibly sitting down and discussing other issues which could work is possible. But I do not think that demands like the Islamization of Nigeria and insisting on Sharia all over there, I have never for one day delude myself that such things.
So, but why do you think the sects keep asking that they should Islamize Nigeria, that Sharia should be implemented in every corner of the country that is secular? You can't even claim that Nigeria is Muslim and Christians alone. There are people who are not part of both religions. There are enemies, there are people that are, there are atheists, there are a lot of people. It's a country of almost 200 million people. Why do you think they keep asking that Nigeria must be Islamized? Why are they saying this? Why do they keep asking this?
Well, they will ask this for the very fact that there is for now no dialogue going on the ground. But they should know it very well that if the last talk which they sent Dr. Dr. Ahmed to do, if you come to the table, I've always insisted, whoever has agreed to a dialogue knew very well that he cannot get all his demands. I know it very well that there were times to which the Delta militants were insisting clearly that they want all the resources, they want the resource control. But they have not gotten any resource control, but they got 13% derivation and also a president that comes from that part of the country. So if they will agree to come to a dialogue, they knew very well that we have a government and a state that is still existing, and that whatever you are going to present, certainly the other person also has an interest. So I think people should not be scared by the very fact that these demands are not realizable. But I am of the firm belief that if these issues will be put on the table, those ones that can work are going to work. For example, someone like me, I cannot sit down to go to mediate with a very strong condition that if it is not agreed that Nigeria becomes an Islamic state, I will not even go to the table because I know it's not something that's going to work. Yes.
Quick question, Comrade Shehu Sani, is why the JTF, when we spoke to them last week, said Boko Haram is on the run in Maiduguri and Yobe. Do you believe this?
Well, you see, from what has been happening all these periods for the last 4 years, if you look at it, the president went to South Korea for a nuclear summit and told the whole world that by June this year, the problem is going to come to an end. He will end security agents. But what has happened up to today, it seems that what he has said is not true. So for those of us who are living in this part of the country, we know it very well that what the security agencies will say on the paper is quite different from what it is on the ground. And I can see the views of Nigerians are even quite different. If you live in northern part of Nigeria, where you see bombs every day and you see corpses on the ground and you see battle between the militants and the security agents, and you see the inability of security agents to crush this militancy, certainly you will opt for a way out, which is a dialogue. But if you live in the south, where you only read about bombs on newspapers, or you watch them on TV in your air-conditioned room while you are sipping a cup of beer or tea, what you can say is simply finish them all. But for those of us whom our children every day move, either they today escape the bombing by the group or fire bullets from the security agencies, what we can say simply is let's find a way out of this problem. If the use of force could have ended this problem, people could have supported it. But the very fact of the matter is that we have seen the inability and incapacity of the security apparatus of the state. Rather, innocent people keep dying every day. So the choice or the option or the views about dialogue is not based on the support for insurgency or terrorism going on, but is a realistic assessment on the ground that there are no soldiers or police guarding the houses of the common people. They are only available within the houses of top brass of government and also police stations and military barracks. So people who are vulnerable simply want a way out of this problem. And that is why there is difference in the way people view things. But for me, what the security agencies are saying, they have also been saying it for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
They will always say they are in control of the situation, or they are on top of the situation, or they have brought the group to an end, and a day or two you see something completely different.
Comrade, another question, of course, is where do we go from here? Is if the government doesn't engage in genuine dialogue and Boko Haram keeps doing what they're doing, do you not foresee an end to the union called Nigeria, the nation called Nigeria, the country known as Nigeria? Don't you see a time that this will just get to a point where we will be headed to some kind of a very, very chaotic crisis of a dimension that would be, of course, war?
Well, what I still do not understand is that why it's only when there is violence in the north that the unity of Nigeria will come into question. And when it happens in other parts of Nigeria, that it's not treated as a threat to national unity. That is one. Secondly, I think as a country, we should take it this way, that this is part of our history. Nationhood is not simply about good times, but it's also about bad times. In the history and in the every generation, there are challenges which you will face. There are times we had slavery as a challenge, we had colonialism as a challenge, we had military rule as a challenge, civil war as a challenge. The challenge of our times today is terrorism. And how we can overcome it will be the part of our legacy, to which the generations that will come in the next 100 years will look back and say, this is what you have done. There is never a time in the history of man that you don't have crisis. And I'm of the firm belief we should understand that our Nigeria is not a geographical expression. I have read a lot of online comments. Most countries in the world, especially in Africa here, are also geographical expression. In fact, it's not geographical expression, it's a colonial expression. But the very heterogeneous nature of Nigeria is not a reason for us to say we cannot live. After all, we have a Somalia that is almost 100% of the same ethnic and religious group. This is where they are. United States and Canada are all colonial expressions, but they are all moving forward. So most of the reasons we give for ourselves are not being very genuine. And for the very fact that this violence is coming in to the northern part of Nigeria, what other parts of Nigeria need to understand is that people who are falling victims of this are not just people who come from the southern part of Nigeria. There are a lot of Muslims that are dying. There are a lot of Muslims also that are suffering. But we should not take it this way. That it's only when Nigeria breaks up that the solution will have a solution to our problem. But what we should understand is that there are all different answers to all our way thinking. There are nations that split up and both of them prosper, like Singapore and Malaysia. But there are also nations that split up and all of them became a basket case, like the Sudan. There are also nations that came together and united and became prosperous, like Germany. And there are some of them that came together and also became a example, like Yemen. So what we should understand clearly is that these are the challenge of our times, and finding the solution to it is not simply by running away. And we should also take it from this very point, that if a nation is faced with a crisis, the solution is not to break up. Because you break up, Southern Sudan has broken up, but has it had peace within itself? It's still the same problem.
Well,
so to me,
comrade,
I think people from other parts of the country should simply identify with people from northern part of Nigeria and find a solution to this problem. There is nobody sitting down somewhere and funding the violence that is going on.
That's exactly the question I wanted to ask you next. It can
also happen in another place.
Yes, this question I was going to ask you next, that you agree with the information that this is being funded by some very powerful people in the north, rich people in the north?
I do not agree that the group is being funded by other persons in the north. A lot of
What about outside? What about from outside Nigeria, from other part of the world that want Nigeria to become an Islamic state? Or
well, I do not think anybody should be debarred from wanting what he wants this country to be. But even in Italy, you have people who want the country the northern Italy to separate from southern Italy. And you also have Confederates still in the United States. But where you cross the line is when you take the road of violence. And that is where the state comes into being. So I know it very well. I have been consistent in being critical of the non-political elites for many decades now. In fact, I fought the Buhari regime when he was a president, and I went to prison, and he is from the north. I fought the Abacha regime. He is from the north, and I went to prison for it. I fought the Babangida regime, and he jailed me. And so I was in prison until Abacha died when I was released, together with Dr. Dekoran Sankuti. So for now, what we should understand, like people who come from the place where the president comes from, when things are right, you say they are right. It doesn't matter whether the person comes from your own part of the country or not. But finding peace is what is most necessary at this time here. If there is anybody funding the insurgency or violence that is going on in the north here, certainly it should not have been any person that I call political elites here. Because most of them today, because of the insurgents, they have either moved to Abuja or sent their families outside of Nigeria. But you also look at it from this point of view. Most of the governors and people holding public offices have their house fully fortified with security agencies. So how can you be funding and supporting the violence going on while you yourself, you are protecting yourself? So I can say that most of them were targeted. But we must accept this fact that the violence going on in the north is a product of years of socio-economic and political decadence. And this is our day of reckoning. Things we're supposed to do, which we have not done, or things we have done wrongly in the past. This is the price to which we are paying for it. It is part of our history, and we must find a solution to it.
Let me ask you a last question. The Boko Haram insurgents, do they recognize this? Are there times that, I know it's not like you had one telephone call away from them, but are there times you say to them, like, if you keep pushing this, this might have unintended consequences? Do they know this? Do they recognize this to the extent that, this might help them understand that maybe the southern part of Nigeria, Christians and other people who are not Muslims completely do not agree or misunderstand this, and they might just look out for an easy way out? As you already described, I think a lot of people are thinking of the easy way out without considering the consequences, as you explained earlier. And because so many of these violence, again, really of religious nature, has happened so many times already in the north. And it was part of, why Nigeria is so troubled today, because we've had so many unresolved, violent confrontations that have led to the death of a lot of innocent people, Christians, Muslims, both from the south and north. Do the Boko Haram leadership or militants understand the consequences of their actions?
Well, from what I know, from what I have also seen clearly, is that whoever decided to pick up arms and fight certainly must have weighed in the consequences of his action. And especially if it involves killing people, you should know that there are consequences for that. And you cannot continue to kill forever. But whether they are sensitive to what may come out of this violence, I think they are in the best position to answer you. But what I know very well is that splitting a country is not an exclusive decision of simply those people, the citizens of that country. Even if we want to divorce, it's not about ourselves. The world must have agreed whether our divorce should be approved or not. You can see what is happening between Somalia and Somaliland. So for now, all I knew it in every respect is that this violence has a lot of consequences, of which one is the one you are saying. But I do not think that people should think of splitting this country as a solution, because we can still overcome this problem if we have overcome other challenges that have happened in the past. One thing that is very clear is that these are testing times for our resilience, our courage, our wisdom, and our ability to tackle our problems. And we should also not take it that if this problem is over, there will not be another one. But what we should also give credence to is that there are people and other sects in the north who completely have a different view, and they have also been voicing it out. So I think this should also be understood. And we also understood that this crisis may also come from another part of the country sometimes in the future. And this is a time for which Nigerians should rally together and solve their problem, and not trying to run away with it because the one part of the country is on fire.
Well, comrades, Shehu Sani, president of the Civil Rights Congress in Kaduna, longtime activist and someone who has advocated for peace to put an end to the Islamist insurgency in northern Nigeria, has been on the phone with us. We run out of time, but you trust that we'll be back to you to talk more about this. You're a friend of this platform. Thank you so much for coming, and we hope to be back to you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So viewers, it's been Comrade Shehu Sani on Sahara TV.